Dirtle Magic. Thank you for tuning in to Dirtle Magic. Please subscribe and hit that notification bell if you like the content you see here today, and leave a like and share the video with someone you might think is interested. Leaving those likes really helps us out, but another way to help us out is by using our TCG Player affiliate link below. If you're looking for singles, sealed product, or gaming accessories, please consider using our link to support the channel. We also have some playmats at inkgaming.com. Go ahead and hit the link in the description to check those out. Alright, let's grab some spells and dirtle with some magic. Hello and welcome back to Dirtle Magic. Today we have the deck tech for Tasigur the Golden Fang. This is a budget deck tech, so a lot of the cards in this deck will be cheap, and this card hovers around $100 depending on the kind of card you get, what condition it's in. So let's go ahead and take a look at the commander, and then we'll dive into the main areas of the deck. Our commander for the deck, Tasigur Golden Fang, is 5 black for legendary 4/5 human shaman and delve. Each card you exile from your graveyard while casting this pays for 1 generic mana and its mana cost. For 2 in Simic, mill 2 cards, then return a non-land card of an opponent's choice from your graveyard to your hand. So Tasigur is very good at limiting the selection of your opponents by using its delve ability to be recast or cast the first time, and it gets you some kind of card selection, putting your opponents in potentially a really bad spot. So let's explore what kind of bad spots we can put our opponents in and what kind of cards we want to use to keep them under control or possibly even make some deals. The areas of the deck we're going to cover today are Decisions, the Politics of No, the Choicest Pickings, and Sascha Deals. First up, we have Decisions. Our commander does allow our opponents to pick something that we mill from our library to our graveyard. So let's help them along with that. Adding a little bit extra oomph to Tasigur is always good, helps us get extra card selection out. Plus, if we need to delve something to pay for the cost, we have a few things we can do with that as well. First up, we have cards like Sascha the Grim, which helps us mill ourselves and possibly deal some damage to our opponents. Pretty good card in here, increases the card selection we could give our opponents. Conversely, we have Biomancer's Familiar, which lowers the cost of activation for both Sascha the Grim and our commander and a few other abilities in the deck. For our commander specifically, it then costs Simic. So we don't have to pay 4, we pay 2, potentially getting even more activations. Wilderness Reclamation untaps our lands at the beginning of the next end step. So we get extra mana to activate our commander. Always a good thing, because even though we're giving card selection to our opponent, we're also giving card selection to ourselves, and having a deck that is flexible is very important. Next up, we have a few creatures that we can sacrifice to fill our graveyard and to help us in the game. Sakura Tribe Elder and Dawn Treader Elka both do a rampant growth type of effect, whereas Caustic Caterpillar comes down early, can get rid of an enchantment or artifact that may trouble us in the future. Rhystic Study, Mystic Remorse, Sylvan Library, Soul Ring, Mana Crypt, you name it, it can destroy it. Plus, with these creatures in the graveyard, it helps fuel delve for our commander. Plus, we could get them back if our opponent selects them, but usually we're going to delve them away. Next, we have the Politics of No, by far the largest section in this deck tech. We basically want to make sure we can make deals by removing threats from other people that our opponents feel good about, and then eventually just keep our opponent from doing anything while we try to tie up the loose ends and win the game. First up, we have a suite of counter magic and abilities that include Counterspell, which is counter target spell. Arcane Denial counters any spell, but the controller may drop to 2 cards at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep and we get a card. Very generous, of course, we're just being all kinds of hugsy. Then we have Drown in the Lock, which counters target spell as long as that converted mana cost is less to or equal to the controller's graveyard, the number of cards therein. And we can destroy a creature, so it also gives us an extra flexibility, although it has that same drawback where the graveyard has to be equal to or less than the target. Then we have a few creatures in the deck that also help us counter things. Spiketail Drakeling is a 2/2 with flying that says sacrifice it, counter target spell unless its controller pays 2, so it counters any spell as long as they can't pay for it. Then we have Cerulean Drake, another Drake, interesting. Flying Protection from Red, which may be relevant, is a 1/1 for 2. Sacrifice it, counter target spell that targets you. Again, we can get both of these creatures into the graveyard as necessary to help fuel that delve ability, plus we can get them back if our opponent so chooses. Of course, counterspells don't do everything, so we need some abilities on creatures perhaps that destroy our opponent's things. Trigon Predator, for instance, has flying, so it has evasion. Whenever it deals combat damage to the player, we get to destroy target artifact or enchantment that player controls, so it's a repeatable effect as long as you keep swinging. Ravenous Chupacabra comes into play, destroys target creature and opponent controls. Sweet and simple. Acidic Slime comes into play, destroys an enchantment, an artifact, or a land, which can be very valuable. And it's a 2/2 with Death Touch, so it's also good on the defensive. Of course, we also have spells in the deck that remove permanents and or other things. Death Sprout in particular, which I like to call Rampant Murder because there's the two cards stapled together. Destroy target creature, and then you get a basic land card from your deck onto the battlefield tapped. Really like this card. Beast Within, catch-all answer to just about everything. And then we have Sultai Charm, which is super flexible. It does only destroy monocolored creatures, but it hits artifacts, it hits enchantments, and it allows us to draw some cards to get more card selection, which is always good in this deck. Of course, there's always a need for mass removal. Gaze of Granite will destroy each non-land permanent with a converted mana cost of X or less. Converted mana value these days, or mana value for the next set, by the way. Curse of the Swine will exile X target creatures. They get replaced with 2/2 Piggy Boar tokens. Silklash Spider deals X damage to each creature with flying and itself has reach and a very large butt, so it's very good for defense against flyers. Plus, it can get rid of them, which is fantastic. 3 mass removals sometimes isn't enough, so then we have Massacre Girl, which gets around hexproof, indestructibility, protection, and can readily wipe out a board except for itself. Find and Finality, the Finality side gives everything -4/-4 till end of turn. You can buff one of your guys to survive that. Plus, on the Find side, we have Recursion, so it's very flexible in the deck. Again, flexibility is key in Tasigur. And then we have Slyclone Summoner, because the deck is budget, but this does bounce every non-land permanent back to its owner's hands, except Giants, Wizards, and lands. And hey, this guy's a giant. You get stuck with a 7/7 on the battlefield when everybody else has nothing. I think you're ahead at that point just by a little bit. Off to our next section, which happens to be Choicest Pickings. Sometimes we can't rely on our opponents to get us back what we want or necessarily what we think they might need to help the table out, so let's go ahead and do it ourselves. First up, we have Soul Manipulation, which can bring a creature back from a graveyard to our hand and or counter target creature spell. A lot of flexible counter spells in the deck, which is very good. Again, that word flexibility. Ballgad Recovery brings any target card from our graveyard back to our hand, plus it's a land on the other side to help with ramping. And Vertus's Maneuver, we can pick a friend or a foe and be very political about it, or if we don't have any friends, we just get something back to our graveyard and some of their creatures go bye-bye. Next up, we have some more recursion on creatures like Mnemonic Wall. Defender, 0/4, but it does come into play and return any target instant sorcery from a graveyard to your hand. Could be removal, could be a counterspell, just to save your bacon in the future. Arcanomancer, the same thing, but it's a 1/2, and it does cost 1 less mana. Skullwinder, however, is a budget include over Eternal Witness. This one also can be used politically. It can get you any card you want from your graveyard back to your hand. Can also let an opponent do that of their choice from their graveyard to their hand, and it has Death Touch, so it's also a very good blocker and deterrent that way. Next up, we have Rakshasa Dealings. The deck is a little bit slow and grindy. It is a control kind of deck, but we need to have a few ways to finish off our opponents other than just grinding them down. First up, we have Sepulchral Primordial. Comes into play, steals opponents' creatures from their graveyards, and then we can swing with it. Also, it has Intimidate, so it has its own evasion, which is nothing to sneeze at. But if you want extra evasion, we have Siege Behemoth. As long as it's attacking, other attacking creatures we control can assign combat damage as though they weren't blocked, which can be very good at finishing off opponents. Plus, it protects itself with hexproof, and I know from experience this thing is a giant pain in the butt. Then we have Reigns of Power, which we saw in video 2 of the series. Couldn't quite pull it off, didn't have that counter magic up, but if somebody is just really dropping all of the bombs, steal them for a turn and use them to eliminate that opponent. Alright, that's it for this deck tech featuring Tasigur the Golden Fang. I hope you enjoyed this series, and if you want to check out the deck in its entirety, there's a link in the description below. Go ahead and check that out. Please remember though, this is a budget build, so you can make a lot of upgrades to it, and maybe if you know a budget card that might work well in here, leave a comment about it, and maybe we'll revisit the commander in the future. Anyway, until the next series, I'll see you around. Stay safe out there.